Star Wars movies are nothing if not memorable. Years into the franchise's beginning, the people who lived the episodes are still astronomically high in number. But if you've ever seen the clips of the older episodes of the franchise, you'd know just how debilitatingly different VFX was back in the day. So today, let's journey through what this age-old franchise would look like without CGI. First up, The Phantom Menace. The actor who played Darth Maul in the 1999 episode talked about his experience working on the set and also dished out insight on how the filming process was for media sets in outer space. Martial artist Ray Park told LA Times that he wouldn't be where he was today in his career and otherwise. We presume if it wasn't for him playing Darth Maul. He also said that it was the best feeling to play the character. As a martial artist and an actor, Parks' primary fighting style is wushu, but for the movie and in preparation for the fight scene between him, Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn, he practiced both ballet and gymnastics as well. Talk about dedication. In any case, behind the scenes, once the choreography was worked out, despite its hurdles, the scene was apparently filmed in front of a whole custom-built blue set and then handed off to ILM, which was one of the sequences they had to complete. To them, it became pretty clear that this movie was going to be unlike any other special effects movie ever done, said producer Rick McCullum. He revealed that George Lucas himself was thinking about somewhere between 1,700 and 2,000 shots, but the thing he was most afraid of was, can ILM do it? Can any effect house do that? Clearly it could, and thank God for that, because it allows us to move to our next pick, which is A New Hope. Now we all know the original trilogy gets praised for a ton of its creative use of practical effects, but the secret is that these movies were just as heavily reliant on visual tricking and audiences as the movies that came after them. But even so, the fact is that modern VFX and CGI just weren't available to the original trilogy way back in 1977. They couldn't just get up and add sparkles and space dusts in post via the magic of CGI, so they had to get creative. And boy, did they get creative. Often at their own expense. But as we know for a fact now, the writers and producers didn't give up on their vision. The effects artists at ILM came up with straight up ingenious alternatives. One of these alternatives was painstakingly hand-painting matte glass paintings that were added to the scene well after it was filmed in post-production. The spaceships in A New Hope. And if you're wondering about the spaceships though, a different method altogether was used to bring them back to life, as told by former man of ILM himself, John Dykstra. Told Den of Geek that back in the days of Star Wars, they kind of walked into an empty warehouse and sat on the floor and went, oh, how are we gonna do this? Fun approach. Then said that the producers of the movie, Gary Kurtz of Fox and George Lucas, took an incredible risk by listening to what Dykstra and his collaborators had to say with regard to do the movie's effects, because they were essentially inventing special effects and stuff from scratch. So naturally enough, when it came to Han Solo's Millennium Falcon, he revealed that he decided to create a model and then film the scenes in front of a blue screen. This was to be done using an early computer-controlled camera, and that's what allowed his team to add all the outer space details in post-production. Now, Attack of the Clones. Jumping into the 2002 movie, let's talk about how ILM rose to the challenge of managing the countless complex shots of the movie. But at the same time, we can't sit here and truly say that the CGI in all of these early movies had aged gracefully. None. Some of them definitely didn't. And this movie is a particular example, and we can agree with all of that and still acknowledge that the management of the movie was still a huge feat for its time. The advances in CGI meant that George Lucas could finally set stories in parts of the galaxies he created that were previously impossible to approach besides in the imagination. He's even admitted that whatever his imagination could come up with, he'd just put it down on paper and say, well, we'll worry about that later. Which he also did for Attack of the Clones. No wonder it was a challenge for ILM. The animation director for the movie, Rob Coleman, said that initially he thought that some of the cityscapes and backgrounds Lucas required for Episode 2 were going to have some practical elements. However, that was not going to be the case. They were informed just how little was actually going to be built on the stage in Sydney, so a bunch of his people began to work on how he could improve our digital environments. John, the chief creative executor of the ILM at the time, and his team worked for months trying to perfect that. And there's more. You didn't think the Attack of the Clones could be condensed into a single go, could you? You see, of the 2,000 effects shot in Attack of the Clones, approximately half are completely computer-generated characters. A team of about 60 animators worked alongside 340 ILM artists and technicians, all in order to render the well-known Star Wars faces in CGI. This also included everyone's favorite Jedi Master, Yoda. Apparently, that was the biggest technical challenge for Rob Coleman due to Frank Oz having created the character in The Empire Strikes Back as a puppet. This time around, Yoda, who is supposed to be 2 feet tall and 874 years old, is much more active and prominent. He actually runs and has a whole lightsaber battle, one of the film's biggest visual effects set pieces including Yoda's duel with Count Dooku, but it also requires some human input from Christopher Lee. Lee was apparently a cast member, like many others, forced to work with blue screens for a long period of time. McGregor even said that he finds working with actors themselves a rewarding experience as opposed to working with CGI, and that makes it hard work and unbelievable. On to the cult classic, The Empire Strikes Back. An Oscar award-winning franchise, Dykstra and his team are lauded a ton for their revolutionary work on Star Wars. Except, interestingly enough, Mr. Lucas chose not to bring Dykstra along when he moved his base of operations to San Francisco. And it was here that ILM got to work on the next movie, and even then, budget restraints were a big thing when it came to making The Empire Strikes Back. Computer-generated graphics were extremely expensive and very slow, and the resolution was always a problem, as VFX supervisor at the time, Richard Edlin, pointed out. But luckily enough, it all worked out, and the team delivered results that worked so well with audiences that people still can't stop talking about the movie. Mark Virgo, the cinematographer for The Empire Strikes Back, compared this era in cinematic history to the lunar program and referred to the period as an amazing cooperative of artists, imagination, optics, engineering, and homebrewed software. Next up, Return of the Jedi. Another cult classic from the franchise, The Return of the Jedi is arguably one of the franchise's most talked about movies. And by the time this episode aired, the ILM team had found what worked for the movies and what didn't. Things were as smooth as they could be. The 1983 classic also introduces us to Ewoks, who become an instant hit with the fandom. They were created by the courtesy of Phil Tippett, master of puppets, and the rest of the work on the effects was divided fairly among Richard Edlund, Ken Ralston, and Dennis Muren. On to Dennis Muren, from whom one of the jobs had to do with the speeder bike chase, one of the hardest sequences in the film with 100 total effects shot. And to enact them, Muren explained that since the bikes were going to be blue screened in, the backgrounds didn't require that many different shots to do because we could get them over and over again. And that's when he got the idea to use a Steadicam. He then called up Garrett Brown, the actual inventor of the device. Then he and Brown did a test out in Samuel Taylor Park where they just walked along with the camera shooting 1 frame a second. Insanely enough, the thing worked, and it worked out really well. So Brown and Muren ended up spending several days out in the woods just filming trees from different angles, then matched up the footage when they went back to the studio to film the actors in front of blue screens. And that's all for this video. What did you imagine Star Wars would look like if it was all shot in the present? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed watching the video, be sure to leave a like and share the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications by pressing the bell icon to get notified every time we post a new video. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.